Petros and I, one evening, were sitting in a park in St. James Park.
What park?
Sorry?
What park were you in?
St. James Park.
Central Park.
St. James Park.
Or St. James.
Here in London. And we were smoking cigarettes. We didn't go to a pub or cafe because we couldn't smoke there. We were both smokers, and we were smoking. And that was our act. Smoking and talking and chewing the fat, as we say in English. And we got those ideas coming up. So that was our act. And that's inspired from the Lacan seminar 15, called L'Acte Psychoanalytic, the Psychoanalytical Act. And it's easy for us now to profit from all those ideas, all those concepts being discussed, branded about. We've got information everywhere. But then, in 1968, which is when Lacan did that particular seminar, there was very little going on as far as training of analysts was concerned. There was only the official training from the IPA, and that was about it, plus the one available from America, from the Anna-Freudians, and there was nothing else. So Lacan was very concerned with not so much action, but the act which makes itself what it is being created. And it's very difficult to explain. But again, it's something which is doing itself while it is doing it. And I think it is in that sense that Lacan tried to present that particular seminar. And there is another particularity to this seminar. May 1968, or 1968 in France, was a great political upheaval. And by the time of May and June, there were strikes everywhere. And Lacan went on strike as part of his seminar. And therefore, that was his analytical act within a particular context. So I've chosen to talk about what I have found to be paradoxes of psychoanalysis, and I'm going to tell them one by one, and I'll stop and we can discuss them and see if there are actual paradoxes. And the very first one is the title I've given to this talk: A Solitary Entanglement. If you get entangled, you get entangled with something or someone, and yet I call it a solitary entanglement. And I hope this particular title does reflect this series of paradoxes. First paradox: the chap who, on his own, by himself, formulated psychoanalysis and said that if you want to become a psychoanalyst, first thing, you go into psychoanalysis. Well, that particular chap, Sigmund Freud, was never in analysis.
Please.
Did he go and see Fleece and said, "Hello, Fleece, I would like an analysis with you"?
You didn't hire him.
Okay. So we have this very, very first paradox, and even then later when he gathered a group of colleagues around him and was teaching and so on, even then he could have gone into analysis with someone, but he didn't. And very interestingly, he says to Fleece, he writes to Fleece, 14th November 1897, that's another paradox: true self-analysis is impossible, otherwise there would be no neurotic illness. No neurotic illness. That's Freud himself, that's from the letter to Fleece. Right, what do you think is the first paradox? The chap who invented it never went into analysis. Is it a paradox or not? Is it because psychoanalysis itself is a paradox? Is it because the object of psychoanalysis is a paradox? Okay. What?
Maybe he was analysed by his patients somehow.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
You know, maybe he was using himself some kind of yardstick.
He says further on, since I am still contending with some kind of puzzle in my patients, this is bound to hold me up in my self-analysis as well. So what kind of act this becomes then?
Well, Freud had the capacity, which I think the analyst has to bear subjective division and to precisely bear subjective division and to precisely assume responsibility for what is otherwise formalized as a paradox.
Yes.
I mean, it's a fact of life that life is not linear, it's not consistent, it's da 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 da. But the real, it does not have a law that regulates it. And that's precisely where the act, be it in psychoanalysis or any other subject, requires I'm not authorized on the basis of some pre-existing law of permission and approval from the other that sanctions. Nobody sanctions the act. That's why responsibility pertains to it. Responsibility to an aim and to a desire.
Okay, second paradox. It's when you enjoy yourself the most that you will tend to go and seek analysis.
Which?
It's when you enjoy yourself, when you're enjoying yourself the most.
That's when you go see, that's when you enter analysis.
Yes.
When you go and, when you're enjoying yourself.
That's the second paradox I'm
Where
proposing.
are the
Well, not if you have a horror of your own enjoyment.
It's just that enjoyment is an enigma.
Is it better? Excess, it's too much enjoyment.
The enigma, yeah. The enjoyment itself is an enigma, okay? As well, and because it is an enigma, that's when it starts becoming unbearable. Because it's incarnated, it becomes incarnated in the body itself, and that's when you're going to make a few phone calls.
That's interesting.
But it is indeed when you are enjoying yourself the most, because that's when the symptoms are out and about. And that's a form of enjoyment.
I think this question arose, I think, last time in a different form. It could be that an enigma is constructed because we're talking about different possible relations to knowledge, different starting points vis-à-vis knowledge. So it could be that for a subject who's on the side of knowledge, that analysis will be posed when an enigma comes out of enjoyment. But for example, on the feminine side of enjoyment, it is itself a knowledge without enigma. It's the hysteric who's identified to the phallic position has an enigma about the other woman, etc. But the feminine position will see out of being, let's say, there is enjoyment without enigma. I don't think you have writings by the mystics being perplexed by a state of enigma. They bear witness to experience. Okay? If they're not perplexed by an enigma, for which they then seek analysis, there is, and we can also talk about knowledges that are without signification, in the sense that they can be lived. So again, that's different horizons of perception, which I think is what the not all opens out to. Yeah? So again, we can qualify. I agree with what you're saying.
I'm in the all. I can only
Yes,
talk from the
exactly.
all.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's an
And
important distinction.
we were talking about that at lunchtime, actually.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the all.
Yes, okay.
She's got access to also something which is not all.
Well, it's on the side of mystery. It's a mystery that one can live with without it being an enigma. Right? This is what the mysterion has an on the end, which is on the side of being. Yes? So what I'm saying is different relations to knowledge, different starting points. So I appreciate what you're saying, but we can qualify it as a testimony on the side of the phallic position, on the side of the so on the left-hand side of the table.
On the left-hand side,
okay.
yes.
Now we have them.
Third paradox. Doctor, I'm not feeling too good. What's wrong? Well, I don't know, doctor. Okay, tell me what it is that you do not know. What? To which I reply, well, how do I do that? Just be stupid, be an idiot. So that's another paradox. Double paradox is that you do not come to seek knowledge, and it is by agreeing not to know, as well as not to try to reason, that you are going to explore, to be able to explore that enigma, to create the conditions of exploring that enigma. So this is completely askew from traditional reasoning, where you try to circumscribe exactly what's going on. So we've got another paradox there.
You are crossing paths with Petros. Petros talked about free association, and you're talking about being an idiot.
Yeah, which is different.
Lacan didn't say to free associate. He didn't think an Analysand could say everything anyway. He said, be stupid, be a Jew, and don't free associate, just be a Jew.
Freud used to say, just say whatever comes to your mind.
And the trivial was strange.
Yeah. Freud never talked about free association. He never used that particular expression.
You know, if you read the introduction to Narcissism, where Freud is talking about his hysteric patient, and the good thing about that text is that you get a sense of him being completely tricked by her. And there's even a part where he relates what she says, and then he says, "Oh, well, I'm under no impression that that she means what she says," and then he gives an interpretation which is again wrong.
Mm.
So he makes another enigma by trying to figure out what she means, and you just get this kind of web of completely missing the point. But that's why it's such a good text. It's so short as well. So I think that's what you're talking about, right?
I didn't have that particular text in mind, but that's what is actually emerging here. Yeah. Okay. Fourth paradox. You think that as you go along to your sessions, things are going to get better. No, actually gets worse. The paradox here is that, as Freud said, we love our neurosis more than we love ourselves. And translated in Lacanian terms, we love our jouissance more than we love ourselves.
Is that quite accurate? Is neurosis?
We love our neurosis more than we love ourselves, yes, that's...
But can we align neurosis with jouissance in that way? Or do you think it meant something else with Freud?
The Lacanian extrapolation is mine.
Sorry?
The Lacanian extrapolation, that's mine, yeah?
Lacanian what?
Extrapolation.
Extrapolation.
Yeah. Freud talks about we love our neurosis more than we love ourselves, and I'm extrapolating. Lacan would say we love our jouissance more than we love ourselves.
We love our negative therapeutic reaction more than ourselves.
That's a really interesting point as well, because if we take out that principle, I don't know where I'm going to write this, and we put it on the side of, to dignify it, we have to start thinking about cause. Because if there's something that really pushes the subject beyond what they can bearably live. We're talking about cause, and that's not necessarily a banal cause in relation to Coca-Cola or chocolate. It goes to the heart of the politics and therefore the ethics of that particular subject that are so decided they are not derailable. So what do I love? What is my allegiance to in my negative therapeutic reaction where I refuse to be well, and that when I experience the movements of wellness, that I retreat back into what is it that what is my allegiance to? And it's the obscure question of cause. What is, you know, I mean, it's not something we can answer, but in a way that's the enigma there, is what is the cause of the subject. And that touches on what Pedro said about being able to say something about your desire. And Pedro declares, I desire, therefore I act. Okay, so we can say that a negative therapeutic reaction is an action that is consistent with that subject's desire, however it is declined.
You know what's a good metaphor is like a meteor burning up as it comes through the atmosphere, and then so it's on a trajectory, it's on a route, and it encounters all this. Let's say that the analyst is the atmosphere of the Earth, and all this stuff comes off. But then once it actually hits Earth, it's this tiny little thing, but it's still got there. It's just got through everything. Does that make sense?
Yes. That's
so all of so regardless of the resistance, there's always still one thing that will get through.
Okay, that's
purified and stuff.
That's a really interesting point too. What you get a chance to do through an analytic experience is to demassify the meteor.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that does. It still is the meteor, but it's demassified. And if I can say a little something around the meteor and trauma, I'll try to say something about that without saying too much. A question that was recently posed to me is that what is it about a traumatic experience which is unbearably devastating in its repetition of hammering the subject with the meteor before it's demassified? That's what we're talking about in trauma, whether it's a light or a heavy one. What is it that's at stake in there for the subject? What is it that's so precious that the subject stays in that position to continue to be hammered until that repetition is over? There is something of the subject's desire and cause that situates him or her in the site of where that repetition occurs for as long as it occurs. And why does the subject, why? There must be something absolutely precious.
That's a paradox.
And yet it's not. What I'm saying, it's a fact. It's a fact. And the reason something came to me very recently where I had been listening to the way Krishnamurti had been articulating something, and there was something in his discourse that brought something of that closer. And there's, I would guess, there is an experience of the subject. Krishnamurti's elaboration of thought, it's very good, actually. What he says about thought is that thought is the pleasure principle, and it's the attempt to recreate an original experience. There's an initial experience that makes an impression on the subject. And he says, in that moment, you're sensitive. Something hits you, whether it's a beautiful woman, nature, or whatever. In that moment, you're sensitive. But then you become preoccupied to recreate that. And that, he says, is the movement of thought. We could disagree with him, but I found it a very, very useful way of looking at it.
That's what Freud does say
Okay.
in inhibition symptoms and anxiety.
Okay, well, Krishnamurti is thinking is disagreeing with Freud, and I felt that he rendered something of both what Freud and Lacan were doing in a much more thinkable way. It was very circumscribed. So he says the whole movement of thought is the movement of pleasure to recreate that original experience.
Who's Krishnamurti?
Krishnamurti, Jiru Krishnamurti, he was the kind of sort of a mystic. He was apparently found by the Theosophical Society when he was about 8. He was about 5 years older than Lacan, and he died 5 years after Lacan.
You wanted to say something?
It is actually, when Aleko said about the mentor, it reminded me in the text of Lacan we're reading this morning, saying that through parting clouds, it is formed through parting clouds. It's formed, it's bursting, it comes raining down what was formerly suspended matter.
Yeah. I can send you some links to Krishnamurti. There was a particular recording that was played towards the end of the time I was there, and it hasn't yet been published, but I will circulate it, because the last 10 minutes of that I felt was a very succinct circumscribing of this perspective of thought as the movement. It's this pleasure principle trying to recreate an original experience. And so what I would add on to that is in trauma, where the subject is continually being hammered by this meteor, he or she remains there transfixed because something of that precious original experience is still trying to retrieve, still trying to do that.
We love our jouissance more than we love ourselves.
The strange thing is that the meteor is just projected when it hasn't hit. So there's also this kind of weird thing about trauma that you're always, that at the beginning of analysis that it's always happened, but it's always not quite happened either. But as analysis progresses, it becomes more in the present, and it becomes also demassified, if that makes sense. So as it becomes demassified, there's less of a terror of it as already having happened or about to happen. So the meteor hasn't quite got here, but once it does, it's just a tiny little thing, and it's still hit Earth, but it's just like even though it's precious.
I see that statement. We love our neurosis, more than we love ourselves, as a distinction between imaginary and the real, and that we're in the real, or living experience, and ourselves. What is myself? What's it made of? Do I love it? Am I that attached? So is that paradoxical?
We're trying to see if it is a paradox or not, or if it is something else altogether. Alexei.
Yeah, I think it's something. I don't think it's paradoxical.
Freud. That's what Freud tells Rotman. We're doing archaeology.
All right.
Yeah. And we're going to peel out things little by little. That's what he tells Rotman. There's a schema he gives, a little illustration he gives in the Letters to Fleece concerning the organization of memory.
Concerning the what?
The organization of memories.
Organization.
Yeah. One memory, okay, and it has a foot in an adjacent memory, but it has a foot in a further down memory. This one has got a foot in this memory, but also a few feet in another layer. So, okay. So, and that goes on and on and on and on like that. That's the account Freud gives back in 1897.
What we're unconscious of is not the memory, but the status, the primary status of particular memories.
Yes.
In other words,
an original experience.
well, if it's an original experience at the level of that something precious that you're not willing to give up, even though you're really under heavy cannon fire, and not just suspended cannon fire, but
it's not cannon fire, it's enjoyment. It's results.
well, yes, but if you're living through it, yes. It's the thing is, you're prepared to undergo something horrible because you're not prepared to give up this something precious, which goes to cause. In the end, what do we sublimate? What do we sublimate? If we take it up as cause, then we don't give up on that which is precious, but we do, well, precisely, and that becomes the orientation of the particular subject in a kind of an unshakable position. On what basis can I insist on something? There has to be something, if I'm not simply relying on master signifiers, there must be something that situates me in a certain way, yes? So what is it that we sublimate? That dedication to the whatever precious it is, we put it to some social use. Yes. So, but there's the process that Alexia referred to, which I think is whatever, is that demassification. So it's not invested with that massive jouissance, precisely because the experience of that articulation, putting into signifiers, etc., begins to distribute it, and that's what the demassification is, in a way. It's you retrieve the jouissance that's invested in one place, in one experience, which is too much to bear, yes, and you release it and put it into other things. Yeah, the subject also has other projects, from maybe one preoccupation to multiple preoccupations, or multiple occupations, whatever. But the point is that it comes to be distributed rather than being condensed in the...
Paradox number 5. Analysis does not offer any certainties, as we keep bearing in mind this. My friend which Klein keeps saying.
Did I say something?
Yeah. And yet, there is a certainty of an appointment at a certain time, in a certain place, with a certain person. We also have what I call a transgenerational certainty. That is, my analyst was in analysis with someone who was in analysis, etc., with Freud. There's a certainty.
It's interesting. I think, again, we'd have to unpack what we mean by certainty. In a way, the less ground there is for my, the less I'm steeped in that experience, the more certain I am, because I cling to a signifier.
Disjunction, discontinuity, uncertainty, or continuity.
There are other grounds. There are other grounds than... It depends how we take up the concept of certainty.
Paradox 6.
You're trying to determine where you are in the analytical play of that sort of game of what generation you are.
Not sure.
Yes, I never really worked it out.
But I'm sure you can, and as you go back up, you'll arrive, for sure, at Freud.
I will arrive to Freud.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's
My
an
personal
anchoring. It's an anchoring in the uncertainty.
It's a way to situate oneself in a discourse.
What's paradoxical about that?
It's similar with, well,
Yeah, it's the opposite of that, actually, because the way those memories are anchored sideways as well as one further down. Yeah?
Okay.
That relates to semblance. Where was I reading about semblance
Very
today?
interesting paradoxes you're bringing up.
If I get too close to Freud, I'll become like Woody Allen. He walks into a Greek restaurant and comes out looking like a Greek. So, I'll come out looking like
the organization. That's the organization of memories from one of the letters to police. That's the one he gives if you want to have a look. So that's a memory there, and he's got a foot there, but also one further down. And it's the same for the memories which are further down.
That's really when you lose your memory through
Have a look.
trauma.
If you want to circulate that, yeah?
Do I want to circulate it?
It's
I'm not going to bother circulating.
It's interesting. I think you're kind of maybe rendering explicit the basis of the edifice of the name of the Father.
Ah.
Right?
Very
So
good.
you're exposing the bones of the all.
Lacan, I keep repeating, does not make things up. He doesn't pull white rabbits out of a hat. He goes and get it from Freud. So Freud, Lacan, Lacan, Freud, Freud, Lacan, Lacan, Freud. Yeah. And that's so important if you are interested by the Freudian Lacanian text.
Do the Kleinian analysts talk about generations of analysts from Mrs. Klein? Not me.
I don't know.
Melanie.
I don't know. But this, but I think the transgeneration, for paradoxical it may be because we're supposed to be living in the present, but we do know that a little word said by a great aunt can actually have all kinds of reverberations in the present. Yeah.
I think it's because, Freud is the father.
I think this notion of transgeneration is, as Penny said, except she didn't finish it off by saying this would represent for psychoanalysis the triumph of the fallen.
No, I think
The name of, I think she said the name of the father, not the triumph.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Should be there.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the turtle. I'm not very artistic, really, but you know the turtle that holds up the world? Certainty rests on the back of the turtle. Okay? And these are your intermediate links. Okay? So if you do, of course, in the history of ideas,
Certainty rests on the back of what?
a turtle.
Ah.
A turtle, yes?
You're thinking of the marks in the turtle shell.
No, well, that too.
Are you thinking of the turtles all the way down?
The turtles all the way
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
Right? This is a condensed, imagine lots and lots of turtles. The thing is, this is why I asked the question of, if we accept your proposition about certainty, then you're in the field of the signifier, and in a way the less I'm grounded in an original experience, which is what Lacan's oeuvre goes to, is to circumscribe and to allow for the original experience. The less I speak from the basis of an original experience without genealogy, the more I cling to the signifiers of certainty, okay, which are to do precisely with heritage, tradition. Master signifiers are all about certainty, and in a way, the S1 is a signifier. As an S1, the signifier is the chandelier I hang from because there's no ground under my feet. And the more desperate I am, the more certainty is important to me because I've got no ground beneath my feet. Yes, to base myself on. And so I hang on the word of another, which is a nonsensical, well, I hang on the signifier of another, which is a nonsensical, whatever. It's just something I grab hold of to hold myself up. And so, university discourse, the semblance of politics, the bullshit of the money system, which are deeply unstable, are all fixed around these search for certainty. It's also what Descartes was trying to deal with when he tried to, he interrogated this, on what can I be certain, that there was this rests with turtles, but that one rests on that one, and that one rests on that one, and that one rests on that one. Whereas actually, the subject who has to deal with an experience, with an original experience, actually takes their bearings from being flattened by the meteor.
By being flattened by the
Meteor.
meteor.
Because you can't be in any doubt about that, because it happened.
Paradox 6. At the start of analysis, the Analysand starts rich in enigmas, whereas the analyst starts as a San Franciscan, that is, poor, very poor in knowledge. At the end, the Analysand becomes poor in enigmas, and the analyst becomes rich with +1 knowledge.
That's what the subject's supposed to know knowledge, is it?
The knowledge of the case itself,
+1.
the knowledge of the experience, +1 knowledge, +1 piece of knowledge.
I kind of like just an end of the analysis. I don't have more enigmas. I don't have more questions. When the analysts, they don't have questions anymore. They're fine. They're okay with their lives, so they don't have to see the analyst. Maybe in the future again, but at that moment.
At that moment, they become poor in enigmas. Yeah, that's what I'm proposing. Yeah.
It seems to me that we're coming closer to ways Lacan had to think about these things in the early teaching. He would talk about hollowing out, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And he would use the term creuser, I think. Not creuser, but creuser.
Yeah.
Yeah, creuser.
To dig.
Dig and hollow out. That would be -1. +1 is accumulation.
Yeah.
Right? So we have a dialectic in the procedure between accumulation of knowledge and hollowing it out.
Yeah, I would go with that to aiming to freedom from the that's what both actually the Analysand and the analyst should get.
Yes?
Freedom from the known.
Freedom from knowledge.
From the known.
Freedom from the known.
Freedom from doxa.
Yes, because
not knowledge. I would say doxa rather than knowledge, or
no,
the known.
Actually, no. Knowledge too becomes impeached. What we discover is that there's a big problem with knowledge. It's a delusion. It's a delusion that encompasses. And if what Pedro was speaking about, if you like, the dexterity of the act, I won't say the analytic act, but the act, is precisely when you can shake off everything that you know and assume the responsibility of the act. It's in a way you can't act if you're not free from the known.
We're gaining different kinds of knowledge from Analysand, aren't we? It's not the same as at all. It's a different kind of knowledge.
Sexual knowledge.
I suppose it is.
But what you extract is the product. Is the product of verification. What you do through the experience of analysis as an Analysand and as a practitioner on the other side is that you are going through processes of verification, which also means a falsification. But that's precisely the freedom from the known, is the falsification of things that are not, that don't pertain, that are not just useless, but are hindrances. Lacan's orientation, and the orientation of analysis itself, is to set aside prejudice, or to put into question prejudice. Yes? So the prejudgment, in other words, the assumption that I know, I precisely become more and more progressively easy with questioning that. Yeah, that's what both, that's in a way the plus that the analyst and the Analysand on the same side, not on different sides, but on the same side, should be freer with questioning that which presents a question, to be able to allow the question, not to obsessively doubt as a kind of systematic thing, but when a question presents, to be able to bear it. And as you say, the hollowing out of knowledge, which is the questioning.
And which leaves the border around the whole that you talked about as the ritual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paradox number 7. To go to an analytical session is it's an active act. And yet, you put yourself up for cutting from jouissance, which means you are in a passive position.
Yeah, could you repeat that? Yes.
To go to an analysis session is an act, it's active.
To go to a session is an action, active.
It's active.
Active.
Yep. And yet, you put yourself up for cutting from your jouissance, for which you have to accept to be passive.
Well, that's why they think that doctors should be psychoanalysts, only doctors, only surgeons.
Well, surgeons who cut.
Yeah.
You mean the cutting of the session?
The cuttings which take place during the session, separation from jouissance. So you have to be.
So what? You're active when you cut, and you're passive in the procedure.
And what's that, lying on the couch?
Are you? This is the problem of active and passive. Right. Freud apologized on innumerable occasions for saying to women, the only way he can define feminine sexuality is passive. And the only way he can define masculine sexuality is active.
Doesn't he qualify? Feminine, obviously Lacan. Feminine, says, pursues, actively pursues passive aims. In other words, to be loved.
Read it out to me.
Feminine sexuality, feminine position.
Actively pursues passive aims. What are the passive aims?
Passive aims is the reflexive, to be loved.
To be loved.
To be, for example, to be, right? Okay, the feminine aspect of this is not.
Don't men do that as well?
Yes, maybe, but
love.
That's what we're talking about. When we're talking about passive in a way that holds, it's in the grammatical sense that the feminine position, whether it's a masculine, male or female subject, in as much as I love, I'm active. In as much as I actively pursue to be loved, that puts me in a feminine position. So, as much as I love, I'm on an active whatever, and in as much as I try to make the other love me, I'm actively pursuing a passive aim. So to get someone else to do something to me. So that's...
Yes, so it's the solitary entanglement.
Yes, there you go. Well spotted, Joe.
Well, wait a minute now. Yes, in the section, we are active going. Acid coming. Okay. Yes, this is turning around on itself. Maybe turning around on itself. A drive from active to passive. The drive has an active and passive aim. So there's a turning around on the self. You're talking about an analysis where there is encounter with the drives already.
The idea of presenting those things as paradoxes, I don't think they are paradoxes, but it's a provocating way. It's a provoking way, yes, to actually try to bring something out. I'm much more, in my seminars, I talk about Mobius strips. Yeah. So this is a way to actually bring out things here and doing some kind of provocation. Okay. Next paradox. You spent all this time, two of you, and at the end of analysis, what do you end up with? With what Lacan used to call absolute difference. Seminar 11, okay? And also the four fundamental concepts of psychoanalysis. And my elaboration of absolute difference is the one of your jouissance, which is entirely singular.
Can't be shared.
It can be shared, indeed.
Yeah.
Therefore, it leaves you on your own. The end of analysis, you spent whatever time with someone else, and the end of the analysis leaves you on your own, all alone. Yeah?
Trying to readjust the rest of the life. This new.
But that's the idea behind the training Lacan tried to put in place, which was that the end of analysis is characterized by a absolute difference. Okay? What he called absolute difference.
And it returns to, again, it's precisely the, you are based on your relation to the cause, your own cause, and you don't simply clone Lacan's signifiers, or Freud's, or anyone else's.
Your own jouissance. You're left with your own jouissance.
Yes, but it's not just being off my head kind of jouissance. It's a certain kind of social bond, actually.
We're coming to that.
Yeah.
If dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, as Freud famously said, therefore what is intangible, i.e. the unconscious, is grasped with something intangible, dreams, to create something tangible, a subject. If dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, therefore, what is intangible, i.e. the unconscious, is grasped with something equally intangible, dreams, in order to create something tangible, the subject.
Is that what he says, the subject?
No, it's me saying that, proposing that as a paradox. I'm saying the unconscious is intangible. Dreams, which are also intangible, are the royal road to the unconscious. And by grasping those two intangible things, you nevertheless manage to create something tangible, i.e. a subject or a subjective position.
That's an interesting one as well, that raises some questions. If the subject is an effect of the signifier. The subject is an intrusion on the original. It's a provocation, it's a provoked experience for a subject that has this imposed. So what we're left with at the end of an analysis is a destitution of the way in which that subject is provoked by the S1. So the subject is caused by the S1. So what I went to analysis for was to make destitute something, experience, that was provoked in me by the S1. So the subject that you have at the end of analysis is not the same subject, and you have the analyzed subject, let's say, being able to do or work with the demassified encounter with that S1. So when Lacan talks about the subject is an effect of the signifier, he's talking about that which is evoked in me, which isn't really me. It's the way in which one of my Analysand was speaking yesterday about some things she doesn't like in herself, and as we sort of, she talked a little more, there's certain aspects of her father that she couldn't stand, a certain arrogance, a certain vanity, and when she sees them in herself, she doesn't like it. So that could be a demonstration of the subject as an effect of the signifier. And then we have another subject, the one who doesn't like that, who says this is foreign to, I don't like the way I am. I go to analysis because there's something in me that I don't like. I'm implicated in an enjoyment that is foreign to me, that I don't like, and yet it's whatever. So it's again, it's really interesting. What she brings back to the heart of where we can elaborate some distinctions to think about.
I'm sort of wondering why you chose the words tangible and intangible. This is where
is my understanding correct? In English, something which is tangible is something which is concrete, which you can hold. Therefore, intangible is the opposite, yeah? Okay, so a dream, can you hold a dream? Can you hold the unconscious? But the subject does have an effect on the world. The subject can pull a gun and kill people.
That's a critique of materialism.
Yeah, but it's still a concept.
It's all up for debate.
Well, the great thing about interpreting dreams is that you don't know one. I mean, people tend to react negatively to the interpretations and go, "That's crazy. Why did Freud make that interpretation?" And that's why it's an intangible concept. That's why it's a good interpretation, because it's like, what are you talking about? Whereas if it was like, oh yeah, this makes sense, that's unproblematic, then that would be.
No, it was not my mother.
Yeah.
Bingo! Yeah? So that does actually create a concrete, tangible effect. That was not my mother. Next one, there's another 3. We've got all those books, printout, papers, websites, information, etc., etc. Yet, the knowledge of the psychoanalyst, his or her knowledge is not in books, but in the experience of his own analysis. That's Lacan. And yet we get all through all the seminars, big meetings, publications, etc., etc.
Yeah, but we need to communicate it. We need to get it down somehow.
Next one. Freud invents something which one of his early patients calls the talking cure. And in order to talk, you have to be able to produce differential morphemes. The way to do that is by articulating your jaws to produce A, O, E, etc., etc. Freud, sorry?
Distinctive features, binary opposition.
Binary opposition, differential morphemes, distinctive features. And the inventor of that technique, what does he die of?
Freud.
Mutism.
Joe cancer. Joe, Freud, yeah, the whole thing. There is a 1938 BBC recording of Freud when he arrived in London and settled, and they were putting radium on his palate in trying to cure the cancer, and he's talking from the very bottom of his throat. He's losing his capacity for speech, and yet he invents a cure based on speech, on verbal speech.
So what's your point? He also smokes.
Is it a paradox or is it not a paradox? He smokes a lot. What he used to smoke cigars. What?
Live by the sword, die by the sword, babe.
Exactly. Okay. Right. I don't know the composition, the chemical composition of the kind of cigars Freud used to smoke. But if we go by the Freudian text, something is at stake there, something is at play there in this cancer of the jaw, which is precisely the instrument which made him famous and which took all his efforts and energy. Yeah. Maybe not a paradox, certainly an irony. An irony.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the very last one. Life is a symptom. It's in fact the symptom of death, because life is the roundabout way for the drive to go back to its inanimate state. So therefore there's nothing but the symptom. That's all there is. And yet that is something you can lean on through psychoanalysis in order to insert yourself into a social bond. It's my last provocation.
Yeah, can you say it again?
Say it again, sir.
Life is a symptom. It is death's symptom. It's beyond the pleasure principle. It is the roundabout way the drive has to perform in order to go back to its inanimate state. Okay? So all there is the symptom. And yet you can lean on your symptom in order to participate to the social bond. My favorite example is your symptom is to cut butterflies' wings. You lean on that symptom, you become a surgeon because you've got the skill to cut. Becoming a surgeon, you cut bodies and you save people's lives. That inserts you into the social bond.
Have you, do you know there was an actor recently who he was in all of the Fast and Furious movies. You know, there were movies about men who drive cars really fast and it's all really violent. And he died really recently in a car crash.
Yeah.
And he said all these things about, oh, if I die in a car crash, then just remember me for being the guy who was informed about car crashes. And it's just like, yeah, it's just the interesting thing about that is that people didn't really sort of make the psychoanalytic point of, yeah, life is like a symptom of death, and what kills you will be a motive through some story of life. They just sort of, there were lots of images going around the internet where there were like a picture of him and then a quote from his lifetime where he said something about how if he dies in a car crash he wants to be remembered, and now he's immortalized as that guy. But there's little discourse around it, but he is still, does that make sense? And it's just a really like weird instance of it happening now. I'm sure it does a lot, but
So in a way, the symptom is the best thing which can happen. If you get to lean on it in order to insert yourself into the social function.
But your statement taken as a whole amount not only to paradox but a kind of impossibility.
Impossible profession,
The impossible professions, yes.
Impossible profession, maybe.
Yeah. So that was my way to try to provoke some kind of elaborations
And you did.
in a pleasant, humorous way. There you go. Very good.